Dolly, and this is Save Your Marriage Today, our interview series. And today we have Ashely Willis with us, which I'm very excited we could finally connect. How are you doing, Ashely?
I'm doing so well, Dolly. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Thank you. And you've had a pretty busy month. Just give us a brief description of what you've been up to lately.
Yes, no, my husband and I speak at marriage conferences all over. And so just this month, we've had a lot of different speaking engagements, but we did for the first time, we took it internationally. So we just came back from what is called the EXO Marriage Cruise and went to the French Riviera, Spain, and Italy. And so that was really, really cool. And we met, I think there were 100 or so couples on this cruise with our group. And it was really fun. Meet people from all over the world.
Yeah. So the Naked Marriage podcast is amazing. And you came out with your new book, the Naked Marriage.
Yes.
Naked Marriage.
Both have the same name, yes.
I love it. I do love it. I got interested right away. My husband and I will be celebrating 20 years. So
awesome. That's great.
Thank you. So when I was reading the reviews, it was saying, imagine a marriage rooted in faith, friendship, and mutual fulfillment. Imagine a marriage with amazing sex, but where great sex is only the icing on the cake. So after 20 years of marriage, I mean, that spoke to me because just, not only just the actual action of intimacy, but, it is just the icing on the cake and getting into that deepness. But also, I mean, intimacy in itself, it's hard to find really great advice for that. Tell me what inspired you to go there with you and Dave to go there with this book.
Oh, goodness. Well, we've had this kind of message about what a naked marriage is on our hearts for a while, and it's not our idea. I would love to take credit for it, but it's not. It's actually based on the Bible, the very first married couple, Adam and Eve. And there's this verse in Genesis 2 where it says they were naked and felt no shame. And I love it because, yes, they were physically naked, and this is before the fall, this is before the serpent, and so they didn't have any shame, but it's not only this physical nakedness, it's this spiritual nakedness. It's literally God, Adam, and Eve, and there's this oneness and this unity, but it's emotional nakedness. They didn't have any secrets from each other. They're just connected on every level. And we truly believe that God still wants us to have that in our marriage today. And as far as intimacy goes, physical intimacy and sex, it really starts with having vulnerability and emotional intimacy before you get to having the great sex. And we believe that as Christians, we serve a God who created sex, and sex is awesome, and he created it specifically for married couples. So we should, look at it as a beautiful gift that it is. But I think that in our culture, it's kind of like Satan has just taken sex and run with it, and we kind of put it in this corner and say, well, that's just this dirty thing over here that we sometimes do. And we don't really we don't know how to talk about it in kind of a favorable way without maybe making our kids want to run and go do it, not being married and things like that. I think we just kind of get caught up where we don't know how to approach it. And we found in talking to couples all over at different churches that the church too sometimes shies away from talking about it because they don't know where to go with it. And so the naked marriage is really, it's about sex, but it's really about all those other things that are even more important than sex itself. And how we get to truly be intimate with one another is through honesty. It's through transparency and building the trust in one another that God really wants us to have. And as Christians too, we believe that in order to really have the kind of agape love, that God wants us to have for one another, the kind of love that doesn't give up when things are tough, the kind of love that can get through anything, we have to be rooted in the Lord. And so we kind of explore what a naked marriage really is in different facets, and every chapter is naked something. So like naked communication, naked honesty, naked sex. So we talk about all those things, and it just kind of goes through how does that practically, how do we cultivate a naked marriage practically? And we do talk about the hard issues, and we're happy to do it, because I think we've got to.
Well, I like even that you brought up the church, because I would say from my upbringing, you didn't talk about sex. Like the religious, the church that I was in, it was definitely, you didn't talk about it. I didn't know if I was allowed to enjoy it when.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yes, like it was, and I love my church. My church family was wonderful. My youth group was awesome. But when it came to sex, I think they just took that approach, like let's scare them to death,
Yeah.
so that they would, heaven forbid, like ever want to do it. And I think they just figured, well, when they get married, they'll naturally know that it's okay. But that's not what happens, because you're telling yourself, I mean, for years and years, it's like, it's this shameful thing. And then anytime, my parents are awesome and they've been married a long time, but I think they didn't know too. Like a lot of parents are like, I don't want to talk about it because then I may have to talk about my own past. And I don't know if I want to go there with my kids. And so my parents' approach was the same. It was like, let's just scare them to death. And anytime I would come with a question or say, like, I heard my friend, maybe had some sexual act with a boy or something, my mom, instead of talking to it about me or talking about it with me, she would just really be like, oh my gosh, that's disgusting, and how shameful, and how, like, it was because she just didn't want me to walk down the same road. And I know she meant well. And I talk about this openly, so I'm not sharing anything that I haven't talked to my mom about, because I think that's where we tend to go, is because we don't know how to handle it. But just kind of what I'm learning and what Dave and I have learned is that sex is a gift. And even with our children, there's a healthy way we can talk about it and say, it's this gift, but there's boundaries around it. It's kind of like a fire in a fireplace. When it's in the fireplace, it brings warmth to all those around, and it's a wonderful thing. But when fire is outside of a fireplace, it just destroys things, and it burns them up and causes a lot of problems. Not to say that God can't heal us, but there's there's consequences. And so, when it comes to sex too, I think with marriage, we come from like background like us, or maybe the opposite. And for Dave and I, he came from completely the opposite background. Like his parents were very open talking about it. They definitely told him the boundaries, but they celebrated it as this beautiful gift for marriage. And so here we come to our marriage, and I'm terrified. And Dave's like, yes, finally. And so we had to work through, some hardship there. And then any baggage that we had, so it's like, you just have to, there's a lot that we all bring to the table. Everybody has stuff that we're dealing with. And when it comes to the naked marriage, the nakedness is laying it all on the table. Yeah. And saying like, I'm going to be completely honest with you. And then also knowing that God is going to heal, when we bring it out to the open and to God and we surrender it to him, that's when the healing can happen. But when we try to hold it inside and figure it out, or maybe keep secrets even, like it's just going to cause harm.
I know you have beautiful stories about, what you and Dave have overcome, and even people, that you've worked with. What are some of the steps that people kind of just to start them on that forgiveness, or start those walls to come down when it comes to the intimate level? Like there's forgiveness, like where do you start with somebody that's, coming from a sexual trauma, not as a child, but as, within the marriage? Right. And now trying to reestablish that sexual connection.
That's huge. And that's definitely something like we talk about in the book. Dave and I have walked through things like that. Dave had a pornography addiction that I was unaware of until, early into our marriage. And I found the evidence of this on our computer, which was in a basement. And that's rule number one, is you don't put a computer in a dark basement where you can hide and continue your pornography addiction. So, those were things that we learned. But Dave, I approached him with it. He came out with it and was, he said it was like the worst day and the best day of his life all at once, because he had been holding that and thinking like, it's just going to go away. I can never let her know because she won't see me the same. And so we had to walk through that. And, I think the first thing that we had to understand is that forgiveness and trust are two different things. Like Dave broke my trust because he was going and looking at these images to fulfill his sexual needs. And that is definitely breaking, trust, mm-hmm. and going against our marriage vows. And it hurt me, and it angered me, it disgusted me. And there were all these different emotions, but I knew that just like forgiveness is described in the Bible, forgiveness is something that we can give. You don't earn forgiveness, you give it. And I knew that in order for us to move forward, I had to forgive Dave first and foremost. It doesn't mean what he did didn't matter, didn't hurt me, or that there wouldn't be consequences. It just meant that I loved him enough that I was going to forgive him and let God do the rest. And I was going to pursue healing over and restoration over retaliation, because I think so many times we just hold on to it because we're angry and we're hurt and we feel like I want them to pay. I want them to suffer like I've suffered. But I knew I had to let go of that in order for him to heal. And I wanted him to heal, because if he didn't stop doing these bad habits of going to porn, then we were never going to move forward, and our intimacy would never be what it could. And so that was something we had to understand. But then trust is very different from forgiveness. Trust is something that can only be earned through consistent actions. And so in order for trust to be earned, in order for Dave to earn my trust again, he had to, he had to know that I forgave him, and then do those acts that he had to do necessary. So we put filters on all our computers. We still have that till this day, filtering software and accountability software. He also, definitely read some books about just understanding how to free his mind of this and how to heal from this, because there was some deep, it was a deep stronghold in his life and had been for many years. So it doesn't happen overnight, but little by little, he did the hard work, and I kept on issuing that kind of olive branch of saying, like, you can do this, and I forgive you. You're not defined by this. Together, we're gonna get through this together. And I think that's something we learned too, because this happened pretty early in our marriage. But I learned too that, any problem we're facing, it's just not his problem or her problem. It's our problem, because everything one does affects the other. And so when you're going through, like, where it's been something sexual, whether it's an affair, a pornography addiction, anything like that, it definitely makes you want to shut down intimately. Like, you're like, I do not want you to touch me for a while. And I think that it's okay to have a very short time where you allow yourself to heal if you've been the one who's been wronged, but you also, it's not to punish your spouse per se, but just to kind of allow a little, like, the dust to settle, so to speak. But I would say too that, and this is not just my opinion, it's in the Word, I would try to pursue intimacy as soon as possible and not allow this time to keep on going on. Because what we have found in the work that we've done is, if you just completely, like, take sex off the table, and I'm not talking about medical conditions here. I mean, there's certain, other times when people have medical conditions. So this is not what I'm talking about. But when you're choosing to just completely not have sex, it really breaks down your marriage, and it causes more distance. And so you just little by little try to have sex once again, but you allow the person who has been hurt to really set that pace. And the person, the spouse who did the wrong thing, whatever that is, just really treads lightly. But I would say that the more that you can both talk about it more, just really, really listen to each other and talk to each other more, the more healing can take place, and the closer you feel. Because, like I stated before, intimacy really starts through conversation and through transparency and connecting on that level. And so the person who did the wrongdoing needs to answer any questions that spouse has, because they have every right to ask you as much detail as they want. And so it's just being totally honest and saying, like, I'm sorry, I'm going to make this right. I will answer any questions because I love you, and I just want to do whatever I can to help, us move forward.
Yeah, no, even when we were going through what we went through, and we came to that place of forgiveness.
Yeah.
I can honestly say that the moment that, I forgave him and he forgave me, the moment I forgave him, it was I had an intensely powerful feeling. Like, I felt powerful.
Yeah.
And almost like giving forgiveness was the biggest gift that I could give. And it made me feel just full, like, just to be able to give it. And that feeling, like, I hung on to that feeling every day, because, they say every day after that, you have to wake up and choose to forgive and choose to love,
Yeah.
So every day. And so I sometimes, I almost like recreate that feeling of, like, that forgiving, just giving that to somebody. And sometimes it's my kids, and sometimes it's my parents, or sometimes it's, somebody in a car. But it's almost like I get that little high of, it feels good to just not wear that anger, not to wear that resentment, but to just forgive. It's when you do that to such a high level, you all of a sudden, you really do realize the power in forgiveness. And you realize that it's not about them holding them accountable. It's rather about you, being able to forgive.
So true.
Very powerful.
It is. One of my favorite quotes is from St. Augustine. It says, holding a grudge is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. Such a good image, because that is, if we don't forgive, that's what we're doing. We're just like drinking poison, thinking we're hurt, we're like holding it over their head, but really we're hurting ourselves. So yeah, I love how you said the fullness. That's such a great word picture.
Yeah, thank you. Your kids, how old are they? How old is your oldest?
Okay, so we have 4 boys. My oldest is 14, and then a 12-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old.
And now the naked marriage, like it is a common topic in your household. How is that going with the kids?
That's a great question. No, it's funny. Like my 4-year-old hears us talking about it, so he'll randomly drop naked marriage, like in random conversation with people, and they're like, "What?" And then my oldest, he just shakes his head, because he knows. I mean, we've had the talk, or the talks. It's really more than one talk, but we've had that with our older 2. And so they're just like, "Oh, that's so funny. I don't know why you call it naked marriage." And I tried to explain, it's not just sex, like it's so much more. But they shake their head, they think it's kind of funny. And my 7-year-old, I don't know if he's even, who knows? I don't even know if it's on his radar yet.
Oh, well, I hate this that our time is up. I guess 2 quick questions. You have to do this all over again. Back to square one with Dave, and now you can look at yourself. You're about to go through this again. Is there something that you tell yourself? You know that you got to go through it. Is there something that you can tell yourself when going through your marriage again?
Yes.
Like what is the one thing you tell yourself?
Oh, goodness. I think for me personally, it's just that there's nothing that is too big for God to get you through it. Because there's been more things that we share in the book that we have been through more than the porn stuff. I mean, there's always things. Everybody has a story. You and I do, and everybody watching this does. We all have trouble. Jesus himself said, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." And I think, I always say this, I wouldn't want to go through those things again just because they're very hurtful and it's just hard. But at the same time, I'm so grateful that we walked through that together, because it really did show me God's power in our lives when we turned it over to him and surrender to him and really clinging to his word. I mean, like there were times where I would have to say it out loud and remind myself of God's truth. And I think it's good in those moments we're brought to our knees and we're humbled, and we're, sometimes it's like, all we have is God. Like all we have is just our hope in the Lord. It shows me so clearly his power in our lives. And for anybody watching, I just want them to know that there literally is nothing too big for God. And it does take work though. It takes, like you said, Dolly, every day getting up and saying, "I choose you again and I forgive you. And we're going to get through this." And, God help us. Like only if God can help us through this, and he can. Like, I think it's just every day surrendering and knowing like, it's going to take longer than I think, because God's timing always is way longer than we ever think it should be. And at least that's been my own personal experience. But little by little, you will see changes. And I think it's really good reminding yourself of those things. Like just hearing you, Dolly, sharing your testimony with me, like I see you light up, because it's like, as hard as those years I'm sure were, it's like you've been through it, like, and you can cling to that, and that's what keeps us going, are those kind of stories, and including our own story.
Lastly, a verse that you lean on.
Oh goodness, there's so many that I love, but probably one of my favorite verses that I still to this day lean on is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And that is, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, and all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Because I think so many times, at least for me personally, my struggle has been trying to analyze things and figuring it out myself. And it just doesn't help. It's like, I just have to trust God and know that even though this is not how I saw things playing out, or even though this is not the way I would do it, just trusting that his ways are so much better than our ways, and keeping on that path, acknowledging him, knowing like, I'm going to keep doing what God has asked me to do, what he's put before me. And I know he's going to take care of the rest.
Yeah. Great. I love it. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking your time today. This was
absolutely.
Yeah, this is great. And I appreciate everything that you and Dave do. Again, Naked Marriage Podcast is fantastic. And of course the book, Naked Marriage, but you don't just have that book, there's lots more. And I'll be leaving in the video following this. So thank you, Ashely, so much, and have a wonderful Mother's Day weekend.
Oh, thank you so much too, Dolly. And you have a great Mother's Day.